So you want to make a game. Maybe you've got an idea of the game you want to make, maybe you don't. You might have an idea of a dream game that you want to make, but maybe you don't feel ready to tackle that particular project yet. That's actually how I started. I wanted to create a very specific type of game, but I also knew that I was crap and that I had no real skills or knowledge. So with all that said, what game type is the easiest to develop as a beginner? So before I give you my thoughts on this, I want to share the 4 stages of competence. In short, the 4 stages are: you don't know what you don't know, you know what you don't know, you know what you know, and you don't know what you know. Basically, it's like second nature at this point, and you can do the skill without focusing on it. Now think about any hobbies that you might have or things that you do for work. Your skills will fall under one of these 4. And this relates to game dev because you might want to create the next Tekken game, but you don't actually know how hard it would be. If that's the case, then you're at stage 4. If you're thinking of developing Tekken and you know the ridiculous effort it would go into create like the controls and the combos and the hit detection, then you're a bit further up that pyramid. Now I'm mentioning this because I think it's important to identify what stage your game dev skills are at. You might consider yourself a beginner, but there's a big difference between competence level 3 and 4 here. Sometimes the biggest hit that you're going to take as a new game dev is to your ego. You'll get some wins, such as like moving a cube, adding gravity, jumping, but then you'll try and figure out something else, like just say projectiles, and it just won't click. You just can't get it worked out. And it's easy at that point to get discouraged, but if you just take your time and you enjoy the process, you'll eventually figure it out. And let me tell you, when you do, it hits like crack. So let's get started. Game type number 1 is text adventures. It's a great starting point. You don't need to worry about graphics, and if you enjoy like narrative and storytelling, you can go mad. If you're having issues with bugs, then you know that it won't be like precision based or physics focused, it's going to be purely logic focused. Speaking of which, there's lots of logic learning, so like if-else logic, which is like one of the fundamental concepts, variables and states, you'll use these in every game project in the future. You'll learn functions, which is like cornerstone logic again, data structures such as like lists of rooms or items that you can pick up. Again, if you're programming in the future, games or not, you'll use this knowledge all the time. And text adventures are a very easy way to break you into these sort of concepts. You don't even need to use a game engine for this. You could get started just using Python or JavaScript, and if you're trying to figure out what game engine to use, then I've got another video in this series which will help you decide. With a text adventure, you can gradually add more features, such as graphics or even procedural generation. So I think text adventure games are a really brilliant starting point for total beginners. Game number 2 is platformers. To have your game qualify as a platformer, you basically need like basic movement and a level to navigate. That's pretty much it. It won't really be a whole lot of fun, but knowing that you made it, that's the fun part. And again, you can gradually add things like hazards or enemies, moving platforms, random level layouts. You're going to learn all the logic from text adventures here, but you'll ideally be working in Unity or Godot, since they take care of everything like physics and graphics rendering for you. So choose a game engine first. They'll also have some pre-configured characters which will help you to basically plug and play the movement with it already configured for you. So your coding experience might be a wee bit more hands-off to begin with, but there's a shitload of resources out there for learning how to make a platformer, pretty much with any game engine, so you have tons of tutorials and help to get you to the finish line. Game type number 3 is arcade games. Basically, pick a game from the 70s or the 80s. Maybe you've got a favourite. Chances are they'll all be incredibly accessible to beginners with the aid of a game engine on their side. Pong is already a very simple game, and it's a great starting point that many beginners go for. Same with Pac-Man. Lunar Lander's another game that will allow you to take advantage of like the physics components of game engines. Unity already handles all this for us. Other games that you could clone are Asteroids, Space Invaders, even the 80s classic called Flappy Bird. These have all been done to death. There's tons of tutorials online showing you how to recreate them. It's a very common starting point for people trying to get into the game development hobby. And game engines do most of the heavy lifting now, so you just need to focus on adding the components that actually make the game. So these are my 3 picks for your first game development project. Now the truth is, you can only go wrong if you pick something that doesn't interest you. You'll have no motivation to work on it, and when you inevitably get stuck or you have issues, you're going to have no vested interest to see it through. So pick a game, even if it's not on this list, that gets you excited to sit down and just get cracking. Another option is taking a large game and coding a very specific part of that game. I've been a World of Warcraft player since 2005. It's probably the game that I've spent the most hours in. And one of the first things that I developed when I was learning Unity was a character creator, since I just love that part of RPGs. There was no game attached to it, nothing happened when you created a character, but I learned states, if-else logic, variables, and UI configuration in Unity. And I was able to look back on it and say, that's a part of games that I love, and I created that thing, and that was the biggest buzz of all. So just ask yourself, what gets you excited just now? What are your interests? What games do you love? Write them all down. Now see what gets you just mega excited to crack open a cold can of Unity or Godot or Unreal or even maybe Notepad. Then you can get to work. Thanks for watching this. Really appreciate it as always, and I'll see you next time.